Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Great White North. Today's episode is 246. We're going to talk All Is Dust, which is a recent GT that we all went to. As usual, I'm your host, Chris. I CanHammer Chris on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm joined by my co-host.
Hey, this is Francois, and I really should start posting on Instagram, but I'm Francois Lalonde on Instagram, very originally.
And joining us, back again, never left.
It's Logan. Yeah, I've been here more often than you recently, Chris. Logan.
One episode, Logan. One episode.
I'm gonna own it as much as I can here. CanHammer Logan on Instagram, and I am remotely active on there. So feel free to follow and reach out.
At least one person complimented Logan and I in our solo episode, which means that clearly it's better when you're not there, Chris.
It's true. Exactly. It's true. 100%. That was the overwhelming feedback
from the one person.
Yeah, the one piece of feedback.
We only have 3 listeners, so you know.
Hey, 3's better than none.
It is.
And none is fine as well.
New peaks.
One of them is my mom.
Your mom listens? No.
Does she say it's her favorite podcast?
No, she doesn't.
Terrible. That'd be so. Oh man,
it's a joke. She doesn't.
Listen. Yeah. Not that we say anything wrong. It's just like I don't want people to listen.
My mom watches the streams when I'm on stream at tournament.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I was on stream. I text my wife and she's like,
I don't care.
Yeah, basically whatever.
That's nice, honey.
Okay, so let's get into it. Any hobby progress you guys have been doing? We'll start with you, Logan. Anything major or crazy that you've been doing?
Yeah, I've been painting up a storm. I was going to take my Eldar to All Is Dust, and I had bought and printed a bunch of new stuff. So a ton of Hawks, support weapons, a Wraith Knight. Painted it all up, was actually super happy with it, and then the day before list lock decided to take Custodes instead. So there we are. But yeah, that army is done. Everything that I've been putting off is now ready for the display shelf or other games. So looking forward to getting it out on the table.
Awesome, man. Francois, anything? Actually, you've been doing some crazy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't actually think I mentioned this last time 2 weeks ago because I just started doing that. But I bought recently the medium set of Army Painter speed paints because I had heard wonderful things about them, and Dan had a box in store, and I have very poor impulse control, so I bought the box. And I also had from months ago all these GSC models that I was just waiting to get into, and the GSC is daunting because you need 100 infantry like minimum right away. So it's a big paint project, and these Army Painter speed paints are magic. It's absolutely incredible what you can do with those things. I paint in 90 minutes 10 GSC infantry without breaking a sweat, and they actually look good. They, even from like relatively close, the detail that picks out is incredible. And from far away, from tabletop distance, I've now painted 60 of them in 2 weeks. Most of them in 1 week because I haven't done a lot of painting recently because of the event we went to. I've got 60 infantry, and when you deploy them on the table, it's just absolutely amazing. And no, it's not as good a result as you could get with traditional paints, but who's going to highlight 100 GSC acolytes or neophytes, right?
There are people. Yeah,
I know. Some people do it, and if you're one of those people, I admire you, but I'm not one of those people, so I would never have done it. I probably would have just done the traditional base coat and wash, and then left it at that. Well, this achieves just as good a result, if not better, but so much faster. And also because they're very liquid paints, the brush control you can get with them is amazing. So you can actually very quickly block off entire sections without going over. It's pretty magical. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, they've kind of taken the internet by storm, eh? The people really like them. I've watched a lot of videos on them, and you showed me some photos. That purple looks fantastic for a Genestealer model. So
also they airbrush really well. I was just curious. I had heard that they airbrushed well, but I'd never done it. So for the trucks that come in the Start Collecting boxes, or actually Combat Patrol now they're called, I decided I wanted them yellow, and yellow is a famously finicky color to get right, even with an airbrush. But if you airbrush the yellow speed paint, I picked the maize yellow, the one that's corn colored, on a gray primer, and you do it carefully so it doesn't pool in 2 coats. I got a super great yellow base coat on those trucks. I was amazed. Yeah,
it's impressive how vibrant the colors are for how thin the paints feel to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I used the GW contrast paints for the very first time, painting up Custode's model for the event, and I think it was the red, whichever one it is, and it was super impressive. Like the whole space for it is good. And I've heard nothing but good stuff about the Army Painter paint, so I guess that's going to be my next purchase.
All right.
Oh, the metallics. The metallics are good. How can they have good speed paint metallics? I don't understand the witchcraft behind that, but
I'll
the
have to check
metallics
those
are
out.
good.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so go on to me. I've just been painting my Custodes.
Same song for the last 6 months.
But because I'm trying to make
your goal, right?
Make my New Year's resolution is paint everything. I'm not sure where we left off because as Logan said, I've been gone for so long. And but I got 10 Sagittarium painted, which was interesting. I got a bunch of Shield Guard painted, and I got Kyria Draxis painted. She didn't turn out quite as well as I would have liked because she doesn't really fit my Custodes style because it was like a sister's model that I repainted for my Custodes, and I should have just started fresh with like a new model or a new spray primer and use some of the newer paints. But she looked okay. I'm just not 100% happy with her. And yeah, I'm just keep going. I'm working right now on I think it's like 14 Spear Guard that are almost done, and then it's like 2 tanks and 10 sisters, and Chris's New Year's resolution is over. So
nice.
I'm excited.
Very nice.
Well done.
Upcoming events. So we just wanted to plug the Capital Clash May 18th at the Red Dragon. You want to talk a little about that, Francois?
Yeah, so this is a GT that Dan is doing for his birthday weekend, actually. I think it's Dan wanted to play on his birthday, and so it's a little tournament. We have these monthly GTs at the Dragon. There's going to be one in April, one in May, one in June, and so on and so forth. But the May one is a little bit special just because it's Dan's birthday, so that's cool.
That is awesome. Happy birthday. I bet she's over 40, right? Is he older than you?
Dan, no, he's younger than me.
Oh, never mind then.
I'm the old man. The only person in our scene that's older than me is Rickard, and he has me beat by a week.
Yeah, the last one is basically there's no other team events. They're all sold out, but we have the Ottawa 40K teams. It's an 8-player teams in June, and there is a couple of team spots left. So if you want to scratch that team's itch and you and 7 of your friends want to go out there and battle against somebody else and 7 of their friends, please sign up for that. It's I think they're going up to 24 teams, right? Or something like that. So
currently there are 15 registered, and I believe there's at least 5 spots. I don't know if they're going above 20. I think that was the original goal, but there's still up to 5, at least 5 spots, I believe, available. Don't quote me on that. I'm not involved in the organizing, but they're at 15 teams of 8 right now, which is, what's 15 teams of 8? It's 80, 40, 120 players already. So it's
quite a bit. Yeah. Oh yeah, and like venues start getting tight after a certain amount.
Yeah, this one is at the Nepean Sportsplex, which is a good venue. Not quite EY Center level, but almost. It's going to be good.
Yeah, tons.
You can't be the best, man. You can't always be the best. I'm just kidding.
No, you have nothing to do with how good the EY Center is. You don't work there.
No, I don't own it. Yeah. We got CanHammer teams coming up. Just want to talk about a few things. There is, yes, of course, we sold out, and thank you so much. Just a couple notes I wanted to discuss with possible attendees, because I'm assuming a lot of them are in our listener base, is we have 6-inch gaps between the player place ruins. And so if you have a super heavy, you can't ignore the sponsons when moving through those gaps. So like a Baneblade can fit through a 6-inch gap as long as it's pointed the right way and moving. Yeah, that was kind of the big contentious question because we put that in our pack and people didn't understand. On the WTC ones, if the gap is only, let's say, 4 inches, well, then if the hull of the tank is greater than 4, you can't fit. But if it's the hull of the tank's 4 and there's sponsons, you can move through for a super heavy round. Just to make it somewhat playable. But
because you want people to bring their shadow swords. Got it.
We don't, but if you do, we wanted them to give them an option to pick the player place terrain, a table, like use them as a defender, pick that table, and then they could actually use them.
And to be fair, if you're going to be bringing shadow swords, you're going to be doing as a defender on player place, right? That's the only way that makes sense.
And putting all your ruins backwards at the back of the board.
It looks so narrative.
I don't care. It adds an element of tactical intrigue.
Sure, let's go with that.
Let's go with that. Other news, we got nothing crazy. We're just really excited. Custodians and Orcs are on their way. They're coming in a couple of weeks. I don't think we have very much information about that. And then we'll move into the main segment, which is All Is Dust.
Before we do, Chris, how does it feel that the three armies that you play, or three of the armies that you play, Orcs, Custodes, and CSM, are all getting codexes in like a 6 weeks period?
It's actually not ideal. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's exciting. I'm like, well, like what happens? Like basically, I have to choose one of them, focus and redesign my faction, and then yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I don't know. I'd rather get like one book a year, and then that way, at least like let's say it was just Orcs, I could play some Orcs, but I'd always have that Custodes crutch to fall back on. Whereas now it's who knows.
Yeah,
so.
No, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because sometimes getting everything all at once is not the gift that you think it is.
No, and like, you know, I'm a big fan of gluttony, and this is not what I'm interested in. Okay, so we'll go back into the main section, All Is Dust. So All Is Dust is a GT in Petawawa, Ontario. It's run by a good friend of ours, Nick Blackburn. Now, the reason it's called All Is Dust is that Nick is a diehard Thousand Sons fanboy. He strongly believes that Magnus did everything right and nothing wrong. And so he runs his GT and he makes it a Thousand Sons theme, right? So, you know, the winner gets a Magnus. You get, what's that sword called? People keep telling me, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like a Kopesh.
Yeah.
Kopesh.
Yeah.
So like the prize is a Kopesh, which is for those that like me who have no clue what that is. It's like an Egyptian sword. That's kind of like...
It's the sword that the Terminator champion has for Thousand Sons.
Yeah, exactly. So...
It's a good tournament. It's the second year running of the tournament. We had it last year as well. It's at in Petawawa, Ontario, which is a very random place to have a tournament when you think about it. But it's where Nick lives, and it's only about an hour and a half from Ottawa, so it's a fairly short distance away. The hotel is good, the venue is good, it's catered, the food is good, and Breath Weapon Gaming, those guys and Nick went all out with like coffee available on site. Nice little well-printed pamphlets with all the maps for the missions printed on them.
I want to talk about that.
You don't have to look at your phone. Like, it's actually a super premium event.
Yeah, like I want to talk about the pamphlets because they were fantastic. Like on every table had two pamphlets at it, which had schedule, missions, and all the terrain maps. I was like, Nick, I'm stealing this.
With the grid on them too.
I took a couple with me.
A couple of times in my games, we were like, is that gap supposed to be this wide? Am I supposed to be able to go through that gap? And then we just pull out the pamphlet, count the little squares, and go, oh, it should be 5.5 inches. And then that solves so many issues.
Yeah, because it's hard, too, sometimes when you're doing, like, the WTC tables to use your phone all the time.
Yeah.
Put your phone on the table, and you're trying to look, and then your phone locks, and then you're trying to measure a ruin, and somebody texts you. And I'm an idiot, and I have my texts so that they stay, so I could read them. So it just blocks the map, and then I have to touch my phone. Oh, yeah. So...
I think one other fun thing to call out for this is I think this may have been the first larger event that's happened around here where we've used all Weyland-Yutani terrain as well, the official WTC stuff.
Oh,
and
yes, that's right.
Having that be homogenous everywhere was wonderful. And the quality on that stuff is really impressive. I mean, this is my first time being able to play around with it in any sort of extended period, and it was great. Especially the little lines on the bases, you know exactly where those buildings are supposed to go. You don't have to argue over, oh, it's a centimeter back or not.
Yeah. And it's not only, so that event is not only WTC terrain, it is the official WTC terrain, the exact same pieces that are in use at WTC. And those will be in use at Ottawa 40K teams in June as well. So another selling point for that event.
And CanHammer teams,
and a bunch of CanHammer
tables. Yeah.
That's true. Half the tables. I keep thinking about the player placed, but you're right. Half the tables will be Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah. Got some good variety of CanHammer teams.
Well, two. But yeah, we had to do what we had to do. But no, you could see I've had a set of those. I bought one of the original sets like a long time ago, and it's nice terrain. You don't have to paint it. It's great for an event, and it stacks really nicely in little bins. So
it also, it packs flat, which is a big selling point for TOs.
Yeah, actually, to dig into that. So for pretty much all the events that we've all run in the past, certainly for if you've ever been to one of the CanHammer tournaments, you can see Chris pull in with a van load of terrain and usually a U-Haul trailer, also full of terrain and mats. For All Is Dust, which was 60 people or something, the entire terrain set for the event packed into 4 plastic totes, and just fits in the back of an SUV along with the mats. It is really, really impressive how well that stuff travels.
Well, and just even think like logistically as a TO, like you have to store it. Where do you store it? And then it's like even the loading and unloading, right? Like, 4 totes in your garage is nothing, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
No
that's
more
why we're
storage unit.
switching to it. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why we're hoping to switch to it and go that. The reason we're continuing with our existing CanHammer terrain is just to, recoup the costs, I guess, so that we don't lose thousands on it, right?
It's not cheap.
It's hard to justify buying 100 of those tables at once because that would be like 20 grand. So it's expensive.
Well,
Not quite. A little bit on
more than I think it's more than that.
More?
But yeah. Okay, so All Is Dust. Yeah. So we all went and we had a great time. It was my first time playing in a GT in Petawawa. I've been up there to go see Nick and play in his basement and stuff, but this was my first kind of time going up there for tournaments. And I remember being at work being like, I'm going to Petawawa for a tournament. People are like, what the heck's in Petawawa? But it's nice. Very nice hotel across from the venue, very small town. So it was definitely worth the trip. Cheap as well.
If you got bored during your game, you could see a hockey game below you because we were in the arena.
So we'll start with you, Logan. You said you switched to Custodes. Why? Why'd you switch to Custodes? And how did you get a Custodes army, man? This is crazy.
I've had it all along, didn't you know? I changed to Custodes because I'm playing Custodes for my team at CanHammer teams and probably a Breath Weapon, depending on, we'll see what the books bring for it. But I've also been working with Jeremy, who most listeners of the podcast probably know, to do some coaching stuff. And he gave me some feedback before the event. And I said, hey, I'm debating, should I take my Custodes or Charlie's Custodes to answer the question? They actually belong to a teammate of mine. Should I take the Custodes or my Eldar list? Both are pretty strong. Both are decent in the meta. I've got some reservations about Custodes. I don't about Eldar, but whatever. They're still fragile. And Jeremy, in his usual very political way, responded and just said, Custodes are more forgiving for movement mistakes. So I
which
took
is true.
It's very true. It's very, very true. So yeah, I wound up taking them. But yeah, it was definitely a last minute switch. I didn't feel amazing about doing that. Like there is some sunk cost that's going on with that. But the one thing Chris and I have talked about at length on many older podcast episodes is sunk cost fallacy in this game. So just sort of cut it and ran with the boys in gold.
So what was your list and what was your or maybe we'll start off with this. What was your goal going into the event, and what list did you take to achieve that goal?
Yeah, the original goal was to go 4-2 or better. And that was under the guise of Eldar. So when I switched over to Custodes, that was still sort of the broad goal for it. But the main thing beyond that was just to get a lot of education for playing the list, or playing the army, I should say, because I had only, I think, gotten 4 or 5 practice games beforehand with the army total, regardless of list. So, unfortunately, I will say, the learning side of it was an absolute success. I'm happy with that. But the list overall, we had Trajan, 3 blade champs, 1 with veiled blade, 1 with inspirational exemplar, 3 units of wardens with spears, unit of guard with spears, and Vexilla in there as well. A Calidus, an Eversor, and 2 units of 2 Alaris. And for those listening, I will say the biggest takeaway from this is that the list was bad. I felt like I was playing about 400 points down every game, and upon review of it, I definitely was with those 2 Alaris units. And the Eversor can be good. The way I was using him was not the right way to use it. There's a much better way you can spend 75 points in that book, Kyria. So that was another takeaway. But yeah, the Alaris were burned points. That was 320 points or something that just did nothing the entire, or 260, I guess, that did nothing for me.
Yeah, it sounds like one of my earlier lists post data slate where I just took a little bit more stuff and mixed and matched and. So I definitely know exactly how you feel, I guess. Francois, what'd you take?
So there's a bit of a theme here because, like Logan, I was using this event as a bit of a practice reps for CanHammer teams, which is our yearly kind of the event we all care the most about, I think, for me anyway. And so I wanted for CanHammer teams to be playing Death Guard, who in teams right now have a very strong niche. There's solid in singles too, but if I was focusing on singles right now, I'm actually most excited about Blood Angels. I think Blood Angels in singles are really good.
Oh, yeah.
And I have these Death Company models there. They were calling to me, but I decided I need the rest with Death Guard. I just switched to Death Guard. I played like 3 games before the event and 2 of them on TTS. So I just needed more practice with Death Guard. So I took Death Guard, borrowed Zach Prinsloo's army. Shout out to Zach. That was a wonderful gesture to let me borrow his army, and then he borrowed my World Eaters and played those. So we did an army swap for the event. And I had a lot of fun with the Death Guard. They're strong, they have potential, but they play very different from what I've been playing recently, which is my World Eaters most recently. And so it takes a little bit of adjusting. You can't quite swap from that army to this army without, I think, 10 to 12 games is where I start to feel real comfortable with a new one. So going in, my expectations were a little tempered by that, by knowing that it's not exactly super powerful singles army, though it's good, don't get me wrong, and it can win events. And also I don't have to practice with it, but I figured it's going to be a good learning experience for CanHammer teams. So I took a fairly standard-ish Death Guard list with 2 of the Grenade Boys, 2 of the Fight First Boys. They each go in 10-man Plague Marine units with all the fixings, all the weapons. Then I took Typhus and 20 Poxwalkers. That unit is getting deleted from the list. It was okay, but I can think of better ways to spend 180 points.
I thought you already removed them after we played. You had talked about removing that.
Yeah, well, the list that I had in mind for Dust, I was already kind of down on them, but I figure I'll give them one more shot in singles. Maybe in singles, that's their niche. It's not. So, unit of cultists, 2 predators, predator destructors with the autocannon. Those are absolute money in Death Guard.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I am tempted to try to find a way to bring in a third. 2 blow drones with flamers. Again, absolute money. Those were MVPs all weekend. 3 Plague Burst Crawlers. I decided to go heavy on the Plague Burst Crawlers. 2 with entropies, 1 with flamers. And I was using them very aggressively all weekend, which mostly paid off. And then just 2 units of Nurglings for little action monkeys and stuff. Very, very good list, but I think the next iteration is dropping Typhus and the Poxwalker and maybe 1 Plague Burst for a 3rd Rhino with Plague Marines. I think you need that 3rd Rhino with 2 5s of Plague Marines just to have smaller units that can go do things, and then maybe a 3rd drone, something like that. I'm still toying with ideas.
It's one of the fun things with Death Guard is all the options you can get, because you can actually build a bunch of different lists and have all the tools you need.
Yeah, you can do what I just did for our latest scrim and think that you have a really big brain idea of bringing the Bellboy to force Battle Shock tests at -2 with your Plague Burst Crawlers, and then it never comes up.
Yeah.
Did you have a specific goal in mind?
Yeah, I thought that this,
like you kind of said, like you weren't.
Yeah, this army I think is a solid 4-2, 5-1 army. Can maybe even with the right path win the event. But that event was particularly competitive. I looked it up, and 6 of the top 7 ELO in Canada were present. So I think realistically, I was hoping for a 4-2 or better. But given the nature of the army and the fact that I basically no reps with it, I did not have any it's fine to temper my expectations. I know I'm not going to do super well. I know I'm not going to win this event, and that's okay. That's not what I'm there for.
Yeah, no, sounds good. So I brought my Custodes, and the thing is I was planning on going 5-1 for the most part, and so there's 2 kind of builds that I've been playing around with the Custodes. One is the all infantry build, which is the one that I eventually brought there, which we'll talk about in a second. The other one is 4 units and 2 tanks that I've been practicing, and you and I had a practice game, Francois, and I played against Jason and a few other people. And I think my kind of theory was, if I'm taking the 2 tank list, I'm maybe going for certain matchups to win the hard matchups and win the event. And the infantry list was more stable. I would probably win more games, place higher if I was to lose against something like Guard that I don't like or can't play into very well. And so I actually intentionally chose that infantry list because I was more comfortable with it, and the fact that I was like, well, I'm probably going to go 5-1, and this will get me to 5-1. Whereas the tank list, I could go 4-2, right? But I have a better shot at winning. I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
No, It's very clear what you're saying. So just basically all you have to do is not play Guard, and you're fine, right?
Well, and that's the thing. And I was like, and if I do play Guard or certain other matchups that I don't necessarily like the Storm Ravens, which I'm not sure. I haven't had a lot of experience into them, and So to me, maybe that I wasn't like 100% scared, but I was a little bit scared of it. And so, yeah, I was just looking at those kind of builds. Yeah, I went for the highest placing overall, which is maybe something that I've been doing a lot of lately, is just trying to do well and not necessarily try and win the events. So definitely followed suit. So, yeah, I took Kira Draxis, who's amazing, in a unit of Spear Guard, and then I took 2 other units of Spear Guard to back her up, all 4s. One had Trajan in it, 3 units of Wardens, 2 Blade Champs, one with Ceaseless Hunter, because it's amazing. It allows you to fall back and charge and move when you come within 9, so you can do some objective play. And I took another unit of Wardens with actually did the Shield Captain. So I swapped out my 3rd Blade Champ, threw in a Shield Captain, and his whole thing is the free -1 damage strat, basically the whole tournament, plus maybe a free reroll to charge if I need it. Just kind of like CP's so tight that I felt he added a lot of value. I also gave him the Veiled Blade, so because he's slower than the Blade Champs, he's more likely to anchor or anvil a flank, and that gave him 9 attacks as well as 1 turn to triple his OC. So I could use that unit to kind of hold a flank against your whole army and maybe delay you a turn, and hold an extra objective. So that was that, plus a unit of Sisters, and that's it. All infantry, very little shooting. Yeah, it was good. So we'll move on to your round 1 there, Logan.
Yeah, round 1, I had played against Josh Crow, who's a pretty successful Warhammer player. Used to be big on the War Machine side as well. Was, I think, part of WTC Canada for War Machine for a while.
We try not to hold that against them.
Yeah. Fortunately, we had a great game despite that. So played into his Tyranids. And it was so not a great result for me. It was a 416, despite me having played that match, I think, for about half my practice games. I did not, or I guess the easier way to phrase this is I undercommitted on one of the flanks for this, with it has taken hold, I think. So I wound up actually being pretty far down on primary. He had a Norn in his list, and he just double stacked one of his objectives with a Norn and the Maliceptor. I'm like, I shouldn't touch that. But I had, for my first turn, moved a unit of Wardens over that direction anyway. And sort of the fatal flaw I talked about with my list earlier is that I only had 4 units that could really interact with everything. Everything else was just sort of, great, I can uppy downy, I can move fast, but they don't really do anything. They're not a threat. And that wound up biting me at the end of that game. So I was not able to catch up on primary, and he was able to lock me out of a lot of secondaries because I couldn't bully him at all, despite having these big units. So not a great start to the event, but that's where Operation Submarine was hopefully going to start.
So do you want to just run through your event, and then we'll go to Francois? So
sure,
keep it easy.
So round 2 wound up pairing into Garnet, who was playing Deathwatch, which I have not seen since I think like the week the game came out before they got nerfed. So that was a great blast from the past. Had to relearn how everything works, and they still have some scary shooting, man. But a lot of the Deathwatch stuff just bounces off of Custodes, unfortunately, both in combat and shooting. So he exposed one of his kill teams a little bit too early. I put a unit of Wardens with my Veiled Blade Champ up front and said, hey, feel free to come hit it. I don't think you're going to kill it. Sure enough, he charges in. I just pop Feel No Pain. I take 1 wound against his kill team and remove the Watchmaster and half the unit, unfortunately for him. And that sort of set the pace for the game. So that one wound up being a 20-0, and the Submarine Dream was alive briefly. Round 3 had a team kill against actually the captain for my team on BDE, Jean, who's playing Grey Knights, which is a crazy match. Just regardless of what army you play, because everything in that army uppy downies all the time, and their shooting got so much more efficient with the recent changes. Those Dread Knights are spooky. But this one came down, and I talk about going into this as a learning experience for it. This match I had I have in general been experimenting with keeping Trajan in reserves to ingress somewhere and just be able to hit something hard, because the Guard are slower than the Wardens of the Blade Champs in general. So held him back, and I was thinking, okay, awesome. Jean has this big Terminator block. If he pushes it up on a flank, I'm going to ingress Trajan outside of his charge range. Next turn, I'm going to hit that brick with 2 units of Wardens and a unit of the Guard, and we'll go through it. And I look at it, I'm like, hey, what's your damage profiles? Okay, 622 on all the attacks. Like, that's pretty decent into Custodes. I need to save my CP for -1 damage to really cut into your efficiency there. So I don't have to burn through all of my resources. Like I don't have to feel no pain and do something else, right? I can stagger this over a few combats. And despite John having told me this before the game, I completely forgot. That unit with the Grandmaster ignores mods. So I had saved CP, I didn't ingress, and I wound up losing that flank. And that turned into a 3 or 4 turn grinder of combat over there, instead of what was hopefully going to be a 1 turn clear. And again, not having other units, the Alaris didn't do anything for me. I lost board control on the other half of the table and fell behind. Still a close game though. That was an 8-12. So happy with it, but definitely could have been better for me. Mm-hmm. And round 4 played into Josh, who brought Sisters, and this was another one that unfortunately for me was just a misplay. We had a chat before the game. I'm not intimately familiar with Sisters. I played against them once. Walked up. He gave me some interesting charge options. He played very aggressive on his turn 1, and left Vol and a unit of Paragon suits right out there for me to charge and pick up. And I looked at them and said, "Oh, cool! They're here. They're reasonably tough. I'm going to try to get a cheeky 2 wounds off you with my Sentinel guns." And that's when I learned about Rejoice the Fallen, and I lost an entire unit of Wardens, and that game spiraled out of control from there. Because what was going to be wiping an entire flank easily, because I had 2 more pile-ins from that into a Castigator and a unit of something else that was back there, turned into that entire unit dying. So that was a good introduction to it. But I guess that's also going back to our last episode, that kind of situation. If you see somebody doing something that's wildly stupid and you haven't directly walked them through stuff your army can do, those can be good opportunities to say, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this? This is the only time I'm going to tell you," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
that's on
shooting when getting shot it's common enough, but it's not that common. It's not one of those things where, like, every game you can ask somebody, "Do you have any uppy downy? Do you have any response to my move?" Like, there's a couple things, and I feel like that shooting one, like it's easy to miss, right? Like it's easy to not ask, "Hey, can you shoot me when I shoot you?" Because there's really only 2 armies that do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd also underappreciated the amount of damage that unit can put out with the grenades and multi-meltas and everything.
And they reroll everything, right? Like, it's nasty. But you're right, it is fragile, and your bolters do. Like a unit of guard on objective shooting them could actually kill 1 or 2 of them to shooting, right? Yep. Depending on his saves. But
I mean, the Wardens took out 1, and then I lost 4 Wardens in response, and then charged in, and the Blade Champ and the 1 remaining Warden actually killed the rest of the unit and Vol.
Oh yeah.
So they pop, but of course Vol gets back up and they fight on death and everything. So it was a bloodbath. But anyway, not a great game for me with that. I let that start get into my head a little bit too much and played way too much on the back burner. So that was a 5-15. And then the last 2 rounds real quick. Came in day 2, was refreshed. We had a nice steak dinner back at the hotel because they had a fire pit and barbecues and everything. So we just hit the grocery store and went back there. Had a relaxing evening. So queue up the next morning, play into Black Templars, Righteous Crusaders, Templars, which is a really interesting match because both Black Templars and Custodians can really smack into each other, and both can do a significant amount of damage, especially with Sword Brethren if you're not popping -1 damage, or you don't have a feel no pain or whatever, and just the Crusader unit is death by dice. Like it's like 100 and something attacks across the unit. It's nuts. So anyway, he had pushed up with his big Crusader unit. He had one big Crusader unit and 2 Sword Brethren and a Land Raider. Pushed up with his Crusaders, grabbed the middle objective. For this was on Ritual, and had spawned objectives. We both had a couple that we had, but both of us were in a position where we would like to hold the center just to stop the snowballing going on. And he had a slight positioning issue and did not roll high enough on his advance to get Grimaldus behind a wall. I charge in with, I think I hit him with 2 units. I think it was a Trajan's unit and a unit of Wardens. Grimaldus gets picked up, and that unit now no longer does any damage. So that sort of pushed on from there. Now, that said, that combat still took 3 turns to get through. He still had 2 units of Sword Brethren, so it was a hell of a grinder for it. But that was an 11-9 win for me. I was happy with that one. I've had a fair bit of practice. Still could have been better on secondaries, but there we are. Happy with it. And final round was into World Eaters. And my opponent, Albert, was a fantastic guy. We had a really fun game. That wound up being a 12-8 for me. Could have been a little bit better, but it was my, I think, second game ever into World Eaters. Francois was my first.
Did you do it?
So
Did you do what we discussed with the strike first
yeah,
and the bait?
yep.
Did he take the bait? Yeah,
he did. He did. He didn't have options not to. Was sort of the biggest thing. So with World Eaters into Custodes, they have a really tough matchup because if like they can fight on death, right? But you have to give up one of your blood tithe options to get that.
And it's only on a
still
4
on 4+.
Yeah, it's not good.
So if you slam into a unit that has fights first, you're going to lose most of your unit. You might get 50% of them attacking back. So that's not good. And if you hit a second unit, sure, you don't have to worry about fights first, but I can just pop -1 damage on a second unit, and now even your 8-bound are doing 1 damage each.
Or a 4+ for your wardens, even, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. So it's an incredibly hard match for World Eaters. So it was a question of who can just get on the objectives and out-OC the other person, and I was able to finish that grind. He locked me out a lot of stuff. One of the cool pieces of tech he had, which I don't know if it's a great choice or not, was actually a Forge Fiend, because the World Eater's Forge Fiend forces battle shock tests on everything, and it's also quite efficient shooting into Custodes because it's AP3 damage 3 with a bunch of shots, and you're almost always getting blast, at least on the first round. So I had to respect that to some extent until I could tag it in combat and start slowing it down, lock it in a bad angle or something. But anyway, finished up being a 12-8, and yeah, that's I think is a really tough one for World Eaters. I probably could have done a little better now that I'm more familiar with it, but it was fun. Overall, 3-3 finish to the event. I'm not, thrilled with it because the wins I got were ones that were probably more in my favor to begin with, but learned a lot about my list, learned a lot about how to fix the mistakes in my list, and learned a huge amount just about the matchups in general and playing Custodes. So time and money well spent. Six great opponents. So good weekend for me.
Yeah. Do you know what you placed overall?
As third, it was low enough that I didn't track it closely. It was somewhere in the 30s. Because the first round loss, because it's path to victory for the placings for this stuff, the first round loss bumped me way, like guaranteed bottom half anyway.
Cool. Well, it sounds like you had a good time. Take it away, Francois.
Yeah. So my round one was into Josh Englund, the Sisters player that Logan later in the event played. I know the Sisters matchup very well. I know what they do. I've played Jeremy on Sisters. I've played Dan on Sisters a few times. So I knew about Rejoice the Fallen. And it's funny because I had played a practice game the week before the event against Dan, and we wanted to just practice the first round Dust mission because, why not? We're practicing for Dust. Let's just play mission 1. And Dan is playing a Sisters list that is almost the same as Josh's. Mm-hmm. So in that practice game, I had played very aggressively just to see what would happen and won a comfortable 16-4. So in that round 1 game, I decided let's do the exact same thing. I deployed exactly the same way, played my first turn exactly the same way, and got a comfortable 16-4. It's very funny. The games went exactly the same because Josh was also doing the same moves in reaction to my moves that Dan was doing. The only difference is how he used More Involved, but they played almost the same. And the game was hilarious because for me, it was completely on autopilot. I'm just doing the exact same moves that I did in the practice game the week before and getting the exact same results. It was like a weird time warp thing. I really enjoyed that. It was very funny.
That's great.
So off to the races. Great start. It's a very good Sisters list, and Sisters can be very, very scary. So I'm very happy with my first game. I'm thinking,
fantastic,
all right, it's going well now. I just won convincingly against Sisters. Let's keep going. Round 2, I hit a Tau player with 9 tanks. And I look at that and I go, oh, what am I going to do against that? Because, yes, I can kill things and I have more shooting than it looks, but I don't have that much anti-tank, really. And I decide my best bet is to just super aggro him. Try to push him back as much as possible, take control of the objectives, probably get tabled by the end, but I'll have enough points that it won't matter. I think one crucial mistake that he made is reserving a couple of those tanks. Sure, he couldn't hide all of them, but he couldn't hide like any, basically. Those Tau tanks are huge. So I'm going to get to see something. So might as well give me all 9, and then everything's there to shoot back at me. And he didn't do that. And I think I also got some lucky rolls on my entropy cannons to actually pick up tanks. Like, they don't generally do that well, but I got I was getting and I picked, it's funny because the contagion that people think you should pick into Tau is -1 weapon skill ballistic, because once they're at -1 weapon skill ballistic skill and you stack the -1 to hit strat, they just don't do anything anymore. Except they're never going to shoot you while in contagion range, so it doesn't come up, because all they have to do is move away from your contagion and then shoot you. So what you do instead is you take -1 armor save. And I had one hero model, cultist model, that was just like shooting down his deployment zone to activate the contagion. And long story short, that was another very comfortable 16-4 win on the back of like playing super aggro. And you'll notice a theme here. My first 2 games, I played the Death Guard incredibly aggressively and got very good results, like strong wins off the back of that. Round 3, I'm up against another Tau player. This time one I know very well, our very own Zach Como, who I know is an exceptionally good player, and he has, instead of 9 tanks, he has 2 Hammerheads, so just enough to just pick up my tanks, and Cyclic Ion Blaster Crisis Blobs.
Well,
God, I'm
crazy.
So glad those things are gone now and not a thing anymore. So here I think the mistake that I made was I decided to turtle and play defensive and go against the play pattern that had been successful the first 2 games, because I was so afraid of those Crisis Blob. And I think in doing that, all I achieved was guarantee that I would lose slower. And whereas if I'd gone aggro, yes, there's potential for that to go horribly wrong and get a 0, but it's not a team event, so who cares? Exactly. I should have just gone for it and gambled rather than guarantee I'm going to lose slowly, but eventually lose. There was one moment in the game where an 8-inch charge into a crisis block would have swung it pretty big, but I failed it, so it never happened. And even then, I think I probably lose anyway. So I got my ass handed to me that one. Zach won a convincing 17-3. And it was not good, Chris. Chris's eyes went big when I said the score.
I thought it was a close game. Sorry, I thought it was a closer game. Oh,
it was close for about 2 turns, and then the Crisis came down and just decided to pick up all of my stuff.
Yeah, why not push into him at that point, right? Like in hindsight, it's 2020, obviously.
No, 100%. That was the mistake. I should have just gone for it. Because why not? I'm going to just lose slower if I don't. And this is exactly what happened. So first loss of the day, of the weekend, and then I pair into another one of our friends, a fellow Team Canada member, John Winter Russell, and his guard. And this, I know from the start, is going to be hard.
Oh, yeah.
Guard is tough, and guard is not good generally for Death Guard, and John is a very skilled guard player. But I'm still happy to pair into him because John is one of my favorite opponents. He's the nicest man alive, and he and I get along really well. We play the same way. It's like we have a seventh sense when we're playing each other on the table, where we always understand exactly what the other is doing. So those games are always incredibly smooth. And for the last game of the day on a 4-game day, I was like, well, at least it's going to go well. I know that no matter what happens. That game, I go second, which into guard, as you know, is a problem because all the artillery can start doing work right away. And I figured that my out was to go aggro again. So I had deployed on the line and go, well, whether or not you see me doesn't super matter. The only difference is that one tank commander is going to get to shoot because all the rest of your guns are indirect. So I was deployed on the line, ready to go, and I go second. So I take a breath and I go, all right, that's going to be a loss, but let's go anyway. And then he does his usual, like, shell you for 5 turns while trying to drown you under waves of Karskins and infantry. And my flamers put in so much work that game. The flamers, especially that one flamer PBC that I put up front on the line because I knew it was coming, it did so much work for me. I think it overwatched every single turn. And every time it overwatches, it picks up like 6 or 7 guard models, which is huge. And so we grind through the game, and at the end we get to the final score, and we figured out that I eked out a win by 7 battle points that I won at level 9. Except I didn't, because at dinner afterwards, we realized that the rules commentary has changed how my sticky objective rule works. And so he had actually unstickied an objective at the end of a phase, and it's no longer end of turn. And so I actually scored 5 less primary than we thought I had. In the moment, we both missed it. But at dinner, John figured it out, comes and talks to me, and I go, we have to fix this. We can't, I don't want to win that way. So Nick is standing across from us on the table, and we tell Nick, can we change our score? Nick says, yeah, no problem. We can change the score. But that's going to change the pairings for everybody because that's going to readjust all the thing. And we don't really want to do that. So the compromise was I said, okay, well, fix our score, but keep all the pairings the same. This is bad for me because I'm pairing up now when I should be pairing down because I have a tie instead of a win. So it's to my detriment, but I figure I don't want everyone's pairings to change because I made a mistake. So go back, change the win into a tie, but leave all the pairings the same, which it's totally okay with me. I would rather we do that and not inconvenience everyone else.
And one of the ties had to play up anyway. So
correct.
You essentially said, like, I'm the tie that has to play up, right?
Rather than randomly maybe get a better pairing for me, I just said, let's just keep it as is. I'm going to play into someone with 3 wins and a loss. That's okay with me. I'll take the matchup. No problem. The matchup being Votann was a little worrisome for me because, again, lots of tanks that I can't kill that efficiently and some very, very scary shooting. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, we're having some beers and having dinner at Kelsey's and enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, Votann can be really scary at times, man. Like,
yeah, well, and that Votann build was a little unconventional because it had 2 land forts, which I really have trouble killing. These are very problematic for me to try and kill, unless I can get Plague Marines into them. And so the game begins, and I'm playing actually a friend of John's that drove up from Montreal with him. So we're playing the game in French, which is wonderful because I'm tired. I didn't sleep too well the night before, and so my brain can go into French mode and not have to work harder than necessary. We played a game, and turn 1, 3 of his bikes just decide to one-shot a Predator tank, which, let me tell you, is not supposed to happen. That is a couple of bands off the probability curve. So when that happens, I go, oh my God, this is going to be awful. I'm going to lose again. But I rallied. I went super aggro again, right at him. And you're starting to see the theme here because I won 20-0.
Yeah. Did he also go aggro into you? Hard?
Yes, and that was the mistake because when you get into that medium range band, Death Guard are incredibly lethal. If he had kept me more at arm's length, it would have been much better for him. He also overloaded a flank too much, and I had reserved a Rhino, and I rapid ingressed a Rhino full of Plague Marines on that flank to then disembark and move the Plague Marines the turn after, and that just won me that flank. Nice. If he had overloaded the middle and kept me at more of a distance, it would have been a lot harder for me to win that game.
Yeah, because I was because one of the armies I'm interested in going into maybe after the WTC this summer is Votann. Mm-hmm. So, and he was one of the only Votann players, and he was winning all his games. Obviously, he's playing you. And so I was keeping an eye on him every kind of round, and like you'd walk by his table and he would be like into his opponents, like a 20-0. Like it was amazing, right?
Yeah, so he played very aggressive. But into Death Guard, you can't. Well, you can do that. Sometimes it'll work, but the problem is you're giving them their perfect, like 12 to like 24, or 12 to 18 is like the band where you walk in there, you die against Death Guard. So that's what happened. He walked into my band and he died. Oh, super nice. Yeah, it was a lovely game. And again, very grateful to have been able to play in French. And so we're going into the final round of the event, and I'm still doing okay. I'm on 3 wins, a loss, and a draw, which is great. And then I pair into Matt Schuckman, who is the Team USA starter from last year, their Eldar specialist, arguably one of the best Eldar players in the world. And I was actually very happy to pair into Matt because he and I have been chatting all weekend, and he's the nicest guy. I'm really glad I got to meet him. I saw him briefly at WTC last year. We hadn't chatted, so it was nice to be able to do that. And he was having a great event. He flew in from Washington, D.C. for the event. His goal was to win one of the golden tickets, and now his golden ticket rests on beating me. If he beats me, he gets a golden ticket. If I beat him, he doesn't. So it was a fairly high stakes game for him, less so for me. But I wasn't going to just let him have it. So I wanted to give him my best effort. So we get to the table. We declare secondaries. I play tactical as I've done all weekend. And he goes, I'm going to take assassinate, bring it down, and table you. I go, oh, okay. It's going to be one of those games. And he had done the same against Jeremy the game before, and that didn't work out against Jeremy, spoiler alert, but against me, it's actually a good plan. He has a Scattac Wraith Knight, which is the dumbest data sheet ever. It's so stupid. I hate it so much. And double Avatar. And I made a mistake in my game plan. Well, it's a mistake or it's not. It depends on your point of view. I kind of defaulted to team mode and decided to score as many points as I could. Whereas, again, same thing as against Zach. That's the common denominator in both losses. I'm going to play the safe scenario and try to get like a close loss or draw. Rather, I should have said, I'm either getting a 0 or a 20, let's go, right? And even if it's only a 25% chance of working in a singles event, that's what I should have been doing. But
Yep.
I guess I've been playing too many WTC scrim games, and I'm fully in team mode, and I just defaulted to the plan, which is I'm going to keep this close because that's what my matrix says it should be. We're going to play the game that way.
You saying that, man, hits so many nerves right now on me, man. I do the same thing.
It's very strange.
Dangerous.
When you play nothing but teams for a long time, and then you go back to a singles event, and your brain just doesn't work that way anymore. I should have gone much more aggro into him. However, I played very conservative, but conservative aggressive in the sense that I was using all of my trash to push him back as much as I could to try and buy myself time to hide my characters and my vehicles so he wouldn't get the bring it downs and the assassinates. And we're playing Sites of Power, which is the one mission where Typhus actually is great because I put Typhus and his buddies behind a ruin on an objective, and by turn 3 I was already on 52 points.
Sick.
Yeah. and he looked at that and he started, you could see in his eyes that he could see the golden ticket fly away there because I was ahead by like 30 points at that point, which was amazing. But he took a breath and he did a very smart thing. He didn't rush. He took a breath, he looked at the board, thought very carefully about his options, and decided that his option was to go even more aggressive at me. And he just threw the kitchen sink forward. Everything that could go forward went forward, full aggro, all gas, no brakes. And there's a little bit of risk in him doing that because if he has a really bad turn, then he's just guaranteed his loss. But again, it's a singles event, so who cares? If he's in the process of losing slowly, he might as well go. And it worked for him. The final result was a 13-7 for Matt, which is probably what is the expected result in a Death Guard Eldar matchup in teams. At least that's what he said it was. I had never played it, but he had tested it extensively, and he said that's about what he expects to happen. Fantastic game, great opponent. I was very happy to get to play him. And if you're going to lose to someone in the final round, losing to the Team USA starting Eldar player is totally fine.
Yeah, like I've seen him around a lot. I never knew him, so it was nice to have some slight conversations.
He's really nice, isn't he?
Before or talked to him, and then
super pleasant guy.
His list was very interesting to me because of the double avatar Wraith Knight. It kind of felt like something like that we were moving away from or not wanting to play.
Well, the Skatak Jonathan had played a lot to great success, but pairing that with double avatar is a gutsy move.
And watching him, and because he played Jason, he played a few other people I know, and them saying like he just went like all into me really hard, and that was a real like interesting. I've never, the Eldar guys we play don't necessarily do that. So much.
They tend to be more like the Trixie players, not the I'm going to take a sledgehammer and bash your head in players.
Yeah, so I found that super interesting.
It was a very good learning game. Of all the games that weekend, that one I feel is the one where I got the most out of from a learning perspective.
And like I would have loved to play him too. I didn't get to, but because I had the same thing. I was like, oh, this could go really bad, and it'd be interesting to see, right? But of course, you don't mind dodging the Team USA guy either, right? So go on to mine. I'll go quick because we don't have a lot of time left for sorry listeners. But round 1, I played a Sisters of Battle player, Thomas, and I've played against a lot of Sisters players these days. Riley, same people as Francois. I also play a couple games with them and have a rather large Sisters collection. So I kind of knew what they did. I expected him to outflank Vol, and when he put Vol on the line behind a small unit of Arcos to screen him in table quarters, I was like, well, if I pop my whole army out in front of his grill turn 1, shoot off the Arcos, charge Vol, this game ends turn 1, and that's exactly what happened. And he was very tired. He was up till painting till like 4 a.m. or something. I felt sorry for him. I was tired as well. But and so he was like, "Oh, I screwed it." That's like he's like, I don't know why I did that, man. I must be tired. And so that ended the game pretty quickly. Other thing is like Custodies just aren't that good for Sisters. There's only really like a couple. Like once the Vol unit's gone, the rest of it takes a long time to.
Arcos just bouncing.
And he had no Castigators. He had 3 Exorcists, which are the worst of the tanks into Custodies. Castigators really hurt. So it was a 20-0 or round 1. Round 2, I draw Ridvin Martinez, a.k.a. Scary. And I was like, this, he just scores a lot of points. But again, Custodies are favored into Dark Eldar because I just like my shooting is so effective into him. And Kyria Draxis can take out his little units and his solo dudes. So turn one, I did get one of his my Mandrake units with Kira. I did have to pop or shoot twice to make sure that they were gone, and that cuts back his scoring. And then I just focused on everything up, everything out in the open, shoot everything I can, charge everything I can, and just let him score when he needs to score. Like, don't bother screening if I don't have to. Like, try your best to screen, but you're better off just taking all the objectives and killing. It ended up a 13-7 to me. I got up really far early, and then he kind of clawed it back later. Then round 3, I played Will Paul in the Custodes Mirror. Will's a
with
very
the
good
same
player.
models. That table gives me a headache.
No, he changed the hair on his models.
Oh, he painted the hair.
Yeah. So because him and I play, so Will and I play, we were on a Adepticon team together, and we did a 4,000 point Custodes army. I think I painted like 2,800 points, and he did 1,200 for himself. So his army matches my paint scheme. I designed the paint scheme, and so we played a few tournaments ago. We talked about it. We couldn't tell our models apart, and luckily he painted all his hair different color on all his units for both squad markings and in case this happened. And basically the mission kind of screwed him. Like he went first this time, which is a disadvantage, and I was able to basically kill his assassins and kind of get kill more frequently. But he clawed it back in the end, and it was 11-9 win to me. So I actually went up a lot higher earlier, and then he just managed to bring me down.
Yeah, going first on Purge sucks.
Yeah, it's really bad. But like 11-9, man, like he did some good work. Those Terminators in the mirror, I think, are really spicy in the mirror. Being able to redeploy them and like really just nail me. Then I played Alex, which is the Votan player that Francois played. We played on stream, and it was awesome. I tried to say as much as I could in French, which feels good for me because I'm taking French classes, but I don't think he appreciates me going back and forth English and French. But I was trying, man. I don't know. I would love to be able to play in French at one of these Quebec tournaments coming up. He pushed into me so hard that I was just able to countercharge and just wipe multiple units in a turn and just kind of push my way across his board, and that ended at 20-0 to me. Then I played Josh, who's Logan's first round opponent. It's a really tough game. I ended up winning 14-6. We were in the 10-10 range for the first 2 to 3 turns, and then I was just able to grind him out long term with the Wardens. And then top table, last round on stream, I played Jeremy with his Space
Stupid
Marines,
list.
Dark Angel Space Marines, and he was confident he was going to win quite heavily.
So he and I had tested that very matchup, and the Plains won, but not by a lot. So I don't know why he was so confident.
Well, and that's the thing, and it's Sites of Power, and I'm like, I was a bit worried going in. I have it as an orange, which is an 8 territory for me, 8-9. And so I spread out. I just held all my objectives. I actually got ahead early in the game, quite far.
It's a good Custodes mission.
Yeah, it was a great Custodes mission, and I got a couple good secondaries early game, and then I scored very little secondaries for the middle game. But last turn, I was up by 4 points on him. So he went first. Turn 5, he's up by 4 points, and then he proceeded to score a 25 that turn. So I was then down by 21 points, and then I proceeded to score a 19. So we got a 10-10 tie.
As he will remind everyone, you needed to draw exactly 2 of the 8 cards left in your deck, and you did.
Yeah. Well, and like he's right, and like so it was lucky at the end. And I had those 2 those were the 2 easiest cards for me to score imaginable. And I was just like, it just worked out, man.
Wasn't it like
happened.
Extend and Secure, like one of the like the 2 easiest cards to score?
The 2 that I would love it, and like it's like the 2 cards I get at all times, basically. Yeah. It was Extend and I believe it was Homer's, but I had a unit.
Yeah.
The way the deployment zones were, I had units like in his zone from turn 2 onward.
So you clawed it back to a tie.
Clawed it back to a tie and took the tournament win, on battle points. Because as you said, he scores a lot of victories comfortably, but they're all 11s. Like he had 3 or 4 11s, and I had a couple 20s put in there and 13s. So I won the tournament, got my sword, Trophy.
Your first
Magna.
singles win in a long time. How does it feel?
Feels okay. Yeah.
Because you're more of a teams player these days, but so it's been a while since you terrorized the singles scenes.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I haven't really been like I was more aggressive this weekend than I usually am, right? I usually play the team environment and I was dialed in on my list. I knew I had the right list. I knew what I wanted from the event. I knew what I needed to get lucky into or to play right. And like when I played Jeremy, I was like set up to just score points and get as high as possible. I wasn't like really going too nuts on him, like too aggressive, but I definitely felt really good, man. Yeah, it's my first singles win in a while. I don't really identify as a singles player, so it's not like I don't. It's nice, but yeah, I don't know.
It is weird.
I have this weird dichotomy about it. Like
a lot of people listening probably don't realize just how playing a bunch of teams just completely changes your approach to the game, and it's hard to snap out of it to play the singles way.
It's not just the approach to the game; it's like your army list selection, the list you play, and then how many times have you and I been? Oh, and you guys just did it today. I'm bringing this list because I'm practicing for a teams event. This is not the list I would take into singles, right? But I have to, right? And for years and years and years, I played, until I got lucky this edition with Custodes being as powerful as they are. But in the past, I always played like off meta things that nobody else played. Like I was never an orc player by like choice, right? I guess it was my first army, but I wasn't like playing orcs because I loved it. It was just like, we need an orc player for the WTC or ETC, right? We need a sisters player. So I played sisters, right? I wasn't like in love with these armies, right? I preferred Eldar back in the day. I was actually a hardcore Eldar player.
Well, that's for the same reason that in 10th, even though I own literally every Eldar model, I never played an Eldar in 10th, even though they've been broken for the entire time, because there's no point in me playing Eldar as long as I'm on a team with Tim, who's a better Eldar player than I am. So he's going to be the Eldar player.
Yeah. Same reason my Tau have been sitting in a closet since 10th came out. I've got a teammate that's a way better Tau player.
But like when you go to this singles event, it's like, I got lucky in the matchups. There's things that I needed that I got, and then I took the right list, and I think I played it correctly, right, for what I wanted. And I was going for high placing. I just got lucky and won it, right? So, yeah, it feels good.
Congratulations. Yay.
Thanks.
Yeah, well done, Chris.
Well done.
Yeah, I didn't realize how long of a singles dry spell I had been on. But then again, you go through my events. I don't play a lot of singles.
No, and we win a lot of the team events we decide to go to. So it's not like you don't have trophies. They're just a different kind of trophy.
Yeah.
And it was nice. Poetic that you, Team Canada captain, came in first, and Jeremy, Team Canada assistant captain, came in second.
Yeah, it felt good.
And Matt Schuckman got a golden ticket, which I think we were all happy to see him steal one of our tickets because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, I there's a little bit of that for fun. USA's taking our ticket, but I think he deserved it.
Yeah, he sure did.
He beat the living crap out of Jason, like,
and he beat me as well. So like, it's not like his path was easy.
It was a good event. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of things Nick did well, and his team did really well. And I thought it was just fantastic. And to be honest, it was nice to just show up with an army and worry about myself and just worry about me, what I need to do. Go out to dinner with a small group because you don't have these 2 teams of 8 or whatever, and go to bed early. It was a very relaxing, nice weekend. But
yep, it was super fun.
I would do it again. Okay, so that's it for the event. We go on to questions. You asked Jeremy's question, actually.
Oh,
Chris,
did I?
how's Chris feel about having finally won singles event post-COVID? Yeah, it feels good, man. Yeah.
Well, asked and answered then.
Yeah, it feels good. And I might get to go on Art of War there next week, so I'm excited.
Nice.
I played Nick Nanavati at the WCW, and we had some nice conversations, so
nice.
It'd be good to talk to him again. If it makes it out there. Next is from Andrew. Why is the Old World the best game GW makes? We'll give that to Logan.
So I responded to this one with a big troll emoji in Discord when it came up. So I still haven't had a chance to play Old World. I'm gonna put that out there. Yeah,
it could be the best game they make. We just have no way to know.
It could be fantastic. Yeah. The one thing that caught me with Old World is that some of the boxes they're selling are exactly the same models from 2002, and they've just quadrupled the price. And
Well,
that
that's what the community wanted. Those old Grognards, they wanted to go back to 2002, and they
you
got it.
see, I don't even mind the models. I just would rather new old stock not be selling for 4 times the price arbitrarily.
Fair enough.
But I mean, that aside, I've heard almost nothing but positive things about the game. Apparently, there's some balance quirks, but I mean, it's a GW game, so that's always going to happen. Um, Otherwise, yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. I've been reading through battle reports. My spouse got me a subscription to White Dwarf, so there's a few old world bad reps in there, and that just takes me right back. Like the nostalgia is definitely there. So whether or not it's the best game, but I'm very, very glad that people are having fun with it.
Yeah, I don't like to think that way. Like, what's the best? Because their best game is clearly Blood Bowl, and that's
the universal truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Underworlds guys at the World Championship seem to be having a lot of fun.
Underworlds is a lot of fun. I just don't have anybody to play locally that's dedicated. I love it. I bought all the stuff. Flushed out my Bretonnian army, dug out all my old models. But as you said, like I'm focusing on 40K right now, and that's just where I have to focus based on, the WTC this summer. Jason and I are planning on debuting Old World in like September. We've kind of talked about it. We're both going to start playing a little bit just to see how it feels. For that, like I call it, September's like my palate cleanser month anyway.
Yeah.
I don't normally do a lot of 40K for September and early October, besides kicking off the new team selection and stuff like that. Cool. So next one is from Christian on the Discord. Do you know which Christian that was?
Let me find out as we go.
I'm just wondering because there was an old fantasy Christian that came to a couple tournaments with us, and he stayed at my house like 10 years ago. And I'm wondering if it's that Christian, the one that moved to
Christian Random Scrub 2.
No idea then. No idea which Christian. I'm wondering if he's a blast from the past or not. But what is the best way to get in Old World? Well, like it's hard. I would say like buy some used models, but they're going for a premium right now because they're
I sold all of mine.
Market's hot. I just bought one of the starter boxes for Bretonnia to get the rule book, and that's the army I wanted to play. I would say figure out what army you want to play and maybe wait for them to get released, or start collecting them now. I would say probably don't go any of the armies that are being not decommissioned, but
legacy or whatever.
Legacy, like you could play them, but they're probably never going to change. So I would go something that could potentially get a new book, like dwarfs or orcs, Bretonnians, stuff like that. And just pick up the books, pick up a couple units, build and paint them. I find with fantasy, because the model count's high, don't set your painting expectation too high, because you'll be painting like 200 models sometimes, depending on the faction you pick. And Bretonnians are a mess to paint because they're beautiful and they're old models, but they're a lot of fabric, a lot of horse skin,
and if you want to do it right, they each have their own heraldry, so you can't even batch them. You have to do them separately.
You can batch them. Like Ricky had a beautiful Bretonnian army that was batch painted, and I thought it was fantastic. But yes, I know what you're saying.
And I just checked. The Red Dragon has one Bretonnia box left in stock, so
there you go.
Get it quick. And
lots of
4 of the Tomb Kings. Only 4 left.
You're set. Yeah,
but the Tomb Kings are easy to paint. Contrast paint, you can probably pound that army out and make it look really nice.
Yeah. As soon as you start working with these units of 20, like even a basic like slap chop approach or 3 colors and based is usually enough to actually make it look great for a tabletop standard, just because everything ranks up and looks good.
Yeah.
I know locally a lot of folks are pushing 1,500 point games as well, which is a little bit smaller. I think it's like the starter box plus a box or 2. So there's a lot of easy ways to get into it. I would say the biggest thing is just find a local group, see if you can jump in, maybe borrow an army for a game, see if you vibe with it. It is still pretty complex mechanically. Like the movement is a huge part of that game, and it's very, very easy to lose if you move poorly. So try it out, see if it's right for you, play some demo games, borrow an army at a store or something. But yeah, I think I'll have a good time.
And then is CanHammer going to host Old World tournaments? Yes, we are. We only host 2 tournaments a year, Capital City Bloodbath and CanHammer Teams. And Capital City, we are looking at doing the Old World. It'll be run by us, the group. So we'll do Old World and 40K. And then there's going to be another organization running our AOS because last year it didn't go so well. We're aware of it. We're going to try to fix that. So we're going to bring in a different AOS TO and kind of organization for that, hopefully. We're in talks, but yes, we will be running at Capital City in August, which is 2 weeks after the WTC this year.
Oh, you've locked the dates down? Can you announce those? Because I don't know what the dates are.
Well, we normally announce after CanHammer teams, but yes.
Okay. But you just said it on air.
It's like 2 weeks after. I don't want to be quoted, but
all right.
We actually redid our logo for Capital City. Bloodbath Max did it, thank you, and CanHammer teams. So we're actually scrambling right now to do some branding for CanHammer teams and banners and stuff. So we're a little bit busy, but
I bet. I bet.
But yeah, we will be running one there. It'll be, standard tournament, 2 days. You'll get a really nice meal. We've upped the catering budget a little bit this year to have nicer food, hopefully. And it should be a really good time. It probably won't be hyper competitive. There'll be a couple people there, but just play, man. Honestly, you want to get in this game, find people, 3-4 people you really like to hang around with. That's kind of crucial. And then just play them. Buy 1,000 points, play 1,000 points, then add 500, then add another 500, and just have fun with it, man. And maybe in September I'll be at some Old World events. Who knows? Maybe I won't be. Right? Just kind of.
If you're local to Ottawa, the community at the Dragon seems to be thriving. There's a bunch of people playing.
Yeah, there's always a game going on when I go in there. So
yeah,
cool. That's it. Thanks for listening. Any final thoughts, guys?
Great to be out at tourneys. Kudos to Nick and the Breath Weapon Gaming team for putting on a great event.
And I can't believe that CanHammer Teams is in 2 weeks. That soon.
Yeah.
Tell me about it, Francois. Yeah, I have boxes of terrain that needs to be cut open. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, have a good one, everybody. If you have any feedback or questions, canhammer.podcast@gmail.com. Bye.
Cheers.